So as students return to schools across New South Wales today, thousands of unvaccinated teachers will be absent. Let's go to the New South Wales Opposition Leader, Chris Minns. Chris, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So are you relieved professionally and personally this morning?
Yeah, definitely relieved personally and, of course, professionally too. So my middle child goes back to school this morning and I'm looking forward to getting him out of the house, and I think he's slightly relieved to not be seeing us for the 13th week in a row as well.
There are still thousands of teachers who are unvaccinated across the state, though. Tell us about your concerns on that point.
Yeah, look, we push for teachers to be first recipients of the vaccinations, to have priority in relation to vaccinations, because there was an understanding earlier on during the lockdown that teachers would be subject to mandatory vaccination. So it was important that they get access to it. We're at about 95% now. New South Wales Labor has supported mandatory vaccinations of teachers. We think that's important in making sure that schools reopen, but also in consideration of the fact that children under 12 currently aren't having access to the vaccination. So it was an important part of making sure that schools return.
And for those who don't get vaxxed by November 8, I think is the date, is it time for them to find a new job?
Well, look, I'd encourage them to go and get vaccinated. It's important for them, for their safety, for their community. And I also think that students and other teachers who have been vaccinated have rights as well. They've got the right not to get COVID-19 in the workplace, to have a safe workplace. And, of course, it's a heightened threat for them because a large number of students, particularly in primary schools, won't be vaccinated, so they need to have that extra protection. But look, we've spoken to the government, we've seen international research, we've looked at other jurisdictions. There's a low rate of transmission for young children of the COVID-19 disease, even with the Delta variant. When you consider the hospitalisation rate is below 2% as well, we think that the measures, while not perfect, are appropriate to get kids back into schools in a safe way.
Do you think that there will be a point, perhaps next year or the year after, where there will be more freedoms applied to those unvaccinated teachers?
Look, I can't speak to that. I mean, I think at the moment the message needs to go out to go and get vaccinated for frontline workers. Those mandates have been in place for various public servants for many years. For example, surgery staff in our public hospital system needed to get the cold and flu vaccine. So did many aged care workers. Firefighters and police officers needed to be vaccinated for hepatitis A and B. So we've had these mandates in place for public servants previously. I think it's an extension of that model, and it's designed to keep us safe and make sure that our public hospital system isn't overrun. So I understand it's a difficult decision and no one wants to support a measure like that. You'd prefer not to make anybody have to do it, but at the end of the day, it's the appropriate decision considering the gravity of the Delta variant and how much it could wreak havoc on the state of New South Wales.
Just one final one here. Are you worried about some classrooms in New South Wales where you've got these teacher shortages at the moment, at least for the next couple of weeks anyway?
Look, I'd urge calm for parents and students and teachers. Obviously, 13 weeks out of the classroom is a big deal for many parents and many students. And I would say I've spoken to a lot of parents in my own electorate and families and friends. Maybe their kids have skipped a beat or two because of home learning over the last 13 weeks. So take your time, speak to your teachers, speak to your principals. And if it's required for the New South Wales opposition to fight for more counsellors and tutors, then we'll certainly do that, because it's an experiment that we've never seen before and we need to take our time with it and get it right.
Just on the subject of housing affordability, Chris, the Premier says everything should be on the table when it comes to housing affordability. What would you like to see?
Well, they've got a discussion paper in relation to the tax arrangements for housing in New South Wales that was meant to be implemented actually in the financial year of 2021-2022. We still haven't seen it. It's still in discussion form. So I'd like to see the New South Wales Premier put his cards on the table, explain to the people of this state what he's going to do in relation to those tax measures. A lot of people have got skin in the game in relation to that. The second part is housing shortages and availability. We've got around 30,000 new housing lots opening up every 12 months. That number should be about 42,000. And when you consider the fact that the median house price in Sydney has jumped by 25% in one calendar year, even though we've had no net immigration into the state for the last 2 years, clearly we've got a real problem in terms of housing affordability, and more needs to be done.
Has there got to be tougher borrowing limits?
Well, it's obviously up to the banks. I mean, they make those decisions, and so does the regulator, in order to make sure that the balance sheets of banks and also the debt for households isn't more than can be handled. So we'd wait and see what those changes mean. But at the end of the day, we need to do more in terms of key worker housing, social housing, and of course the supply issue, which is not nearly enough to keep pace with the number of people that need a family home. It used to be the case, Peter, that one parent could work, get your kids through school and afford a mortgage. Then it went up to two parents would have to work. Now, for many people, that's not even enough.
Just a final one on GST. The Premier says that the current carve-up puts a heavy burden on New South Wales and Victoria while WA booms. Do you want to see a reform of GST?
Look, I'm all up for a reallocation of where the funds are spent, particularly in Australia's largest state. But I don't want to see an increase in the GST, and I don't want to see a broadening of the base. I mean, I've spoken to people right throughout this state. No one says, can we please pay more GST? When tolls are up, taxes are up, charges are up, fines are up. The state tax base is growing at 3% a year, even though the economy is growing at 2%. Look, people are really stretched to the limit, and no one is saying, geez, I can dig a little bit deeper and give a bit more to the Commonwealth government.
Chris Minns, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Peter. All the best.